In the first 2 weeks of the developmental psychology course, we're going to talk about the developmental perspective and how many of them are researched to get some of these theories that we're reading about. But first we need to understand that development is defined as an orderly and sequential change that can occur with the passage of time or as the organism moves from conception to death. So as children and adults develop, we look at the areas of physical development, cognitive development, and emotional and social development. The physical development is obviously the changes that you can see in someone's body as they grow and as they age. Cognitively, those changes occur in a person's brain and in a person's way of thinking. Emotionally and socially, these kinds of things include changes that concern a person's personality, their emotions, and their relationships with others. And when we study development, we need to look at three things. We need to look at growth, maturation, and learning. Growth refers to the increase in the size that accompanies age. Maturation is the unfolding of a biological potential in a set, almost like when someone matures. It's irreversible and you can't go back. Learning happens when you modify your behavior based on your experience in that environment. And those things are really impacting a person's development over time. Now, some of the theories that you're going to run across in these first couple of chapters really set the stage for how people develop throughout their lives. One of the main theories is Psychoanalytic Theory, and that is believed that we can progress through stages, and we have a conflict in each stage, and in order to get to the next stage, we have to resolve that conflict. Freud, his stages were called psychosexual stages of development, and each stage had to do with some pleasure-giving zone of the body. There's the oral phase, the anal phase, the phallic latency, and so on. And so Freud really thought that we had this conflict that we have to get through before we can go to the next stage. And if we don't get through that, it's called a fixation, and that can stay with us for a very long time. Erik Erikson had a psychosocial stage of development perspective, and what he thought was that we have to get through this social stage of our lives in order to get to the next one. And so we have our identity versus role confusion stage. We may be in stagnation versus generativity. And those different stages explain why our personalities are the way they are based on our social environment. There are other theories throughout the chapters that you can read as well. One of the biggest arguments that you will find in developmental psychology is the argument of nature versus nurture. And this argument tells us that we can either choose to believe that our traits and our personalities are basically biological and they are genetic and they come from our parents and our historical upbringings throughout our generations, or they're brought through nurture, which means our environment influences us to change. And so if you know children, when reading these first couple of chapters, if you know children who are adopted, you can really get a good idea of their nurturing abilities and their nurturing skills through personality, because you might not know their biological upbringing, and so you can see the nature versus nurture. So in these first couple of chapters for developmental psychology, we're looking at how the child is being conceived and how the child develops in utero, and then after it's born, you get to see some of the theories actually take place. So I hope you enjoy this lecture, and I hope that you enjoy your first couple of chapters of developmental psychology.